Hello, I'm Kim Dodsworth, 4RPH Queensland storyteller. Today, a story from a real Australian achiever. Her name, Jean R. Williams, OAM, of Nambour, Queensland. A 10-minute program like ours cannot possibly do justice to the work of this wonderful lady. Her OAM was awarded in 2003 for service to Vietnam veterans and their families over 2 decades. At her own expense, she's written widely about the health-destroying chemicals used in that conflict. Jean's short story, Cycling to Somewhere, about an encounter with one of her boys, late of Green Slopes Repat Hospital, Brisbane, mentions one of her books, The Devil's Rainbow. Honoured by her country, praised by the likes of Sir William Dean, US General William C. Westmoreland, the beloved Fred Hollows, and many, many others, she's known to Vietnam vets, of whose association she is an honorary life member, simply as our mum. I am truly honoured to have been asked to read this short story of hers. Cycling to Somewhere by Jean R. Williams, OAM.
Will you be home in a couple of hours? I need a copy of The Devil's Rainbow.
The caller's speech sounded a bit blurred. However, it was probably my hearing aid needing new batteries. Assuring the man he was welcome to visit, he sounded relieved. It was one of those midsummer days when the best place to be was somewhere cool, preferably air-conditioned. Outside, a withering sun bleached the landscape, awaiting the late beginning of the wet season north of Capricorn. And as I was about to have a visitor, it was time to replace those failing hearing aid batteries. Just before noon, a figure appeared in the laneway, trudging beside an ancient bicycle. As he limped towards the door, I went outside to greet the traveller. "Hello, just put your bike around the side under the trees." He parked it, slightly unsteadily, under a canopy of subtropical palms and bottle brush. Even in the shade, heat pervaded. Ushering the visitor inside, after shaking hands, it was obvious he was extremely weary, and his dry, reddened face denoted dehydration. "Make yourself comfortable in an easy chair while I fix some drinks," I said. "You look as if you need one," then added, "And the bathroom's down the hallway, if you want to wash your face and hands to cool off a bit." "Thanks a lot." He looked a trifle more comfortable after downing chilled mandarin juice and washing the dust off his face and hands. "As it's so darn hot today, we can have a salad lunch if you'd like a cold meal. Then I'll get you a copy. I guess you're a Vietnam vet." "I'm just out of Green Slopes Repat in Brisbane. Last night I slept by the roadside at Biawa. Didn't have enough to pay for a motel room." Looking at him closely, he had that 1,000-yard stare I'd observed too many times since the return of my son and his army mates. The former soldier told me he was now in the fire brigade, and that he'd had a strange attack while filling the fire engine at a service station. All of a sudden, he didn't know who he was or where he was. The next thing he knew was that he was lying on a bed in a psych ward at Green Slopes Hospital. I told him I'd been to the veterans section of the hospital, and how it impressed me with the warm atmosphere towards war casualties and their families. He nodded. With a shock of black curly hair, well-built frame and softly spoken, my caller could well have been one of the fireys on their annual calendars. His features were unlined, and his eyes were not the bleary, reddened orbs of those alcohol-ridden. They were clear summer sky blue. "I saw a copy of The Devil's Rainbow in the ward, so that's why I'm here. I couldn't stop reading the book, and was tempted to pinch it." He did a bit of a chuckle. "Now I'm on my way to Gympie to meet an old army mate. I don't know where he lives, but hope to find him. They say Gympie isn't a very large place, but it's a fair way north of here, and you've already travelled nearly 100 km from Brisbane. Do you think you'll make it?" "Your bike is hardly fit to do the Tour de France." I looked across at him, almost despairing. "One thing, your book on the Agent Orange problem really got to me. I just wanted to have a copy to share with mates." He placed a hand on my shoulder and looked into my eyes. After eating a hearty meal laced with copious fruit drinks, the veteran sank into a large easy chair and was soon in a deep slumber. My daughter-in-law arrived by car. "Shh, I whispered, opening the door. "There's a bloke here asleep. Cycled all the way from Brisbane and is on his way to Gympie, then to his home, another 500 north. Been in Greenslopes." She looked understandingly at the sleeper, away in his own dreams. "He's worn out, but I can't have him stay here. My granny flat is hardly the place for a stranger to stay overnight." She agreed, as she understood the post-traumatic stress suffered by many war veterans. Life with my son had not been all beer and skittles. My caring daughter-in-law left after a short stay. My next step was to contact a Vietnam veteran living a couple of kilometres distant. He assured me a bed would be found at the Udlo Veterans Retreat about 12 south, on a quiet bush acreage where men are helped to cope with trauma and other war-related problems. The main building was the effort of many Vietnam veterans labouring on the site to produce a low-maintenance structure, 1 story high, with single bedrooms and large living and recreational areas. Wide verandas on 2 sides enjoyed bush outlooks. Bird life was prolific and native animals roamed the hillside. Peace and tranquility all around. For more than 2 hours my fireman slept, and it was over a cuppa that he began to enlarge on his story. I'd been in pretty good health until my attack, which must have been somewhere out of Rockhampton. It just came out of nowhere. They were really good to me at Greenslopes, but I just wanted to go home, so I borrowed someone's bike, don't know the owner, found some civvy clothes that fitted, then shot through. The doc mightn't be too pleased. By the way, how's your son? Infantry medics had a rough trot. Well, he's not travelling too well. We make the best of things. Before daylight dwindled, the local former infantryman called to pick up the escapee. We'll look after him for a few days until he gets on his feet. And after handing him a copy of the desired book, which he clasped tightly to his chest, and shaking hands, we parted company. Days after, I phoned the Veterans Retreat to find out how the fireman coped and whether he was still there. No, he only stayed 2 days, then we put him and his bike on a train to Gympie, and God only knows what happened afterwards. He was a really decent bloke. Very sad, like so many others. Usually I write down veterans' names and addresses for future reference. However, in this case it didn't happen. When I look at my copy of the fireman's annual calendar, it reminds me of my stranger, and I wonder whether he made the grade from a psych ward to near normal living. After more than a decade, the man, cycling to somewhere, remains a reminder of those who, years after being demobbed, have post-traumatic stress erupt without warning. This final poem which Jean sent me is not one of hers. The writer is unknown, and it was quoted in her book, The Devil's Rainbow. It's so sad that I debated for a long time whether I should read it. But I think it needs to be heard for all those who have not faced the horror and futility of war. Those who have do not need convincing. The Sniper. I shot a sniper once near Newey Dat. A small brown man, loose clothes, a coolie hat. The treacherous assassin meekly crept into an ambush my platoon had kept. He dodged from tree to tree, and on his back a fiendish bomb lurked in his haversack. I fired, he fell. My mates no longer hid, but gathered round in praise for what I did. He was the enemy, although the trace of youth filled every feature of his face. That's what we said, Rebecca, what we said. They all were enemy, once they were dead. And then the sappers came with much aplomb. They eased away the pack that held the bomb. No chance was taken. Careless sappers die. They shot it full of holes and wondered why it didn't detonate. I wondered too, perhaps. And still a hero, I undid the straps. To find a shattered toy, half cup of rice, a netty used for catching butterflies. And far more cruel, Rebecca, far more cruel, his books rolled up for homework after school. Now, when I hear the stamp of marching feet and see the glint of medals in the street, a voice inside me screams, what can they mean to children just like you, whom at 15 and catching butterflies, themselves are caught by murderers engaged in sterner sport. No flag-inspired pride can stem my tears. You got Vietnam nerves, a lady jeers. But you and I, Rebecca, you and I, know there are other reasons people cry.